Hi. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a sad video today. As you can tell from the title of the video, my cat Bella passed away. And it's not something that happened recently. It was actually a year ago today, but I just haven't really felt like talking about it until now. In fact, I think it's a small part of why I haven't made any vlog videos recently. I just knew that I would need to include it, as I've done often in the past, given updates about the cats, because I know some of you are cat owners and cat lovers, and that you'd want to know what's up with the cats. For those of you who haven't been watching the videos that I've made in the past, I had two cats, Psiman and Bella. Well, Psiman's still here. Had him since 2011 and Bella since 2015, but unfortunately she passed away a year ago today, July the 7th, 2019. She was a cat that my wife and I got when we lived in the UAE, and we had her there for 2.5 out of the 3.5 years that we lived there. And unfortunately, the day after bringing her back to the UK, I picked her up and noticed there was a bit of a lump underneath her armpit, essentially, or kind of on her breast. Hoped that it wasn't anything too serious, took her to the vets, they did a biopsy and found out that it was breast cancer. I didn't know at the time that it's actually really quite rare in cats, and especially ones that were as young as her. She wasn't even 4 at the time. And so we decided to have the lump removed and see where things went from there. So we did that. She recovered from it amazingly well. It was like the day she had it done, she didn't seem too fazed by it, and definitely by the next day she was up and running around just as if nothing had happened, aside from the fact that she had a little jersey on that we bought for her, as you can see in this little video clip here. She looked quite adorable. She really didn't like the collar thing that they put on, that cone that they put on animals to stop them licking or scratching their stitches. Well, she didn't like that, so we got her a little jersey and she got on fine with that, no complaints. And she recovered well physically from the operation. We took her to an oncologist to kind of get a prognosis, see what the next steps are, but unfortunately they told us it's not good news. Cats don't really live very long with, well, at least with their limited experience, or as I said, it's quite rare. They predicted 6 months to a year is what you should expect if no treatment is given. Maybe a year to 2 years at the outset if they removed all of her breast tissue and gave her chemotherapy. Maybe 2 years, but they said it might not make any difference at all. It might be 6 months, even with that done. So we decided not to go for that invasive surgery, and we didn't know if she would bounce back as well from that as she'd done from the small operation that she had. But they were pretty much right. It was almost 6 months to the day that she passed. And I mean, it was about 5.5 months from the day that I discovered a couple more lumps. Everything had been fine, no issues, until one day I picked her up and there were a couple of tiny little lumps in more or less the same place as the one that I'd found originally. And well, I didn't think it would come back there, at least from what they'd told us, because they'd removed that breast tissue. But that's what happened. And we took her to the vets. They said, well, we can remove these lumps as well. and kind of ummed and ahed about it. Do we want to put her through it? Will she find it as easy the second time to have this? But eventually we decided, okay, let's do the treatment, have these lumps removed, and see how things go from there. So we took her back to the vets for a checkup to make sure that she was fit enough to go through the procedure, and they said, all things considered, she's in remarkably good health, easily healthy enough to have the operation. That was on the Wednesday. By the Saturday, her condition had deteriorated quite substantially. One of the things the oncologist had told us to look out for was her breathing, because when the breathing starts becoming rapid, you'll know it's near the end. And Bella had always had breathing problems. She'd got quite a somewhat raspy sound to her breathing, especially when she was eating food. That would be quite funny. She did like to wolf food down. That's one thing she did love. She was a hungry cat. But she, she started getting really quite rapid breath. We hoped at first that it wasn't to do with the cancer, that she was just having a bit of a breathing episode. She'd had a few times in the intervening years, times when she'd it's almost like asthma. And all aside from one situation, we didn't really have to do anything. She just calmed down and it kind of returned to normal. One time we did have to take her to the vets to have some oxygen treatment, but after that, again, it was fine. So we kind of prayed that it was just that. But by the end of the day, when my wife came back from work, we realised, no, it must be more serious than that. She would have calmed down by now. So we took her to an out-of-hours vet who had a quick listen to her and said, based on the tests that had been done in the past and that she had cancer, it must be that. It spread to her lungs, and within the next few hours or the next couple of days, she's essentially going to drown in her own body fluids. And that's horrific, and as they said to us, it's a horrible way to go. The best thing to do would be to put her down now. And of course that really shocked us. Even though we kind of knew it was coming, it was still hard to hear, and we needed to take a bit more time. So we took her home and didn't really sleep that night, and just hoped that it would pass, that it wasn't the cancer and the doctor was wrong. But come the morning, it was just as bad, maybe even a little bit worse. So we decided to go back, and this was about 7 o'clock in the morning before my wife had to go to work. And we decided the best thing for her was to have her put down. It really hurt. It broke my heart. And I mean, I think I must be a pretty lucky person that one of the most horrible things I've had in my life is having a cat put down, because obviously there are people out there who've had terrible lives that full of tragedy. But I guess I'm a fortunate person that that having a cat put down ranks up there with the worst things I've had to experience. I mean, I've had loss in my life. All of my grandparents have passed. I'm in my mid-40s, and so of course loss is a normal part of life by this stage. Unfortunately, both of my wife's parents have passed, but just seeing this cat pass was heartbreaking. It felt to me like the death of innocence, because she was just the sweetest, kindest little cat. Oh, I mean, everybody who met her, the vets also used to say to us, oh gosh, she's such a lovely, sweet cat. She never complains. Whatever little procedures and things we have to do to her, she She says, some cats, they'll try and rip your arm off, but her doesn't mind at all. Everybody who saw her, touched her, because she was so soft. Oh, the softest cat. They just, like that, fell for her. You might look at 2 pictures of her and look at our other cat, Berman, and think, oh, yeah, he's really beautiful because he's got blue eyes. And yeah, he's a handsome cat, but she was just so sweet. And I think that just made it more difficult to see her go, because it's not like she'd had a full life. It felt like we were robbing her, even though we weren't. It was the cancer that was robbing her of life, but it just felt unjust for something so young and so innocent to be losing its life. And I didn't feel worthy or qualified to make that choice, but my wife and I had to come to that decision, and we thought we were doing the best, and I hope we were doing the best for her. But and it will always stay with me, just seeing her go, from being so lively, even right up until the end. She kind of got out of the box because they'd taken her away to one room to put, I think it was a shunt or something, or in her arm, her leg, to then put the injection into. And she was good as gold, didn't complain about that. Brought her into the room, she got out of the crate, chirping away, making these sweet little noises as she always did. And the vet even commented, oh my God, she's such a lovely cat, making beautiful noises, which you don't want to hear at that point. I know he was trying to be nice and complimentary, but here's this wonderful little life, and it's not going to be here in a minute. And it just, hearing that really stung. But just, they'd said to us it'd be painless and it'd be over quickly, which it was over quickly. Whether it was painless, I don't know, but it definitely came as a shock to her. Once they'd put the injection in, just a second later, she jolted, and obviously that was her heart being stopped. And then a second later, she just keeled over. I mean, we were holding on to her, but she just lay down and she was gone. And yeah, it really did break my heart, and I just wept. I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit it. Cried like a child, I really did. And my wife said to me later, she said, we've been together 16 years, I've never seen you shed a tear. And you just broke down. I was like, I couldn't help myself. It just, something overwhelmed me. It was so sad. I wasn't sad for me, of course. She's not around now, and that hurts. But it was a sadness for her, thinking that you haven't had the life that you were supposed to live. The cats like that, you expect them to be around for 15 years, but 4 years? It didn't seem right. And and I don't know how my wife coped with that day, because she had to go to work straight from there. I had to drive her from Portsmouth, where we were living at the time, over to Southampton. She had to put on a brave face and lead a course that she was teaching, because there was no one else to cover it. And that's just kind of the person she is, that she's strong when she needs to be, and she just put on a brave face and got through it. But after dropping her off on the drive home, God, I just wept. I think I cried the whole way back. As soon as I got in, I saw the other cat, Berman, and just broke down crying again, picked him up and cuddled him. And it really, really, really hurt. But, obviously after 20 minutes or so, I pulled myself back together, and I haven't cried about it since. But it was a hard thing to go through. I think maybe more so possibly because my wife and I don't have children, and so some of that love that would be devoted towards children was kind of funneled into the cats, the kind of surrogate children. And I'm not trying to say this was as bad as losing a child, because it must pale into insignificance in comparison to that. But yeah, it hurt. It really was a stab in the heart. And still think about her a lot all the time. I mean, she's here on the coffee table. She doesn't live here on the coffee table. She's normally up on top of the piano, but I thought I'd put her here for this video. And we obviously had her cremated, and we were going to have her in just a normal casket, because when we were at the vets, they said, "Oh, do you want just a normal box or a sleeping cat?" And my wife and I looked at each other and thought, well, the box, because the sleeping cat will be awful. And then the next day she had a look and saw what the sleeping cat thing was and thought, oh, well, that's lovely. And it was even better than we thought it was going to be. So such a nice ornament and a lovely reminder. I mean, it's not like we're going to forget. We've got pictures of her as well, but there's always a reminder of what a important, small, because it was only 2.5 years or so, but an important part of our lives having her around. And yeah, I just wanted to make this video to share with you guys the experience and share some photos, a little bit of video of her, and just talk about her. Kind of, I guess it helps me a little bit as well. And I thought, well, maybe share a couple of little memories of her. I mean, most of the memories I have of her are related to the UAE where we lived and the bungalow we lived in. And I can remember her tearing around the place, chasing toys, and especially ping pong balls. She would go crazy for a ping pong ball. She'd entertain herself for quite some time with one of those. My wife had found this little toy cow and she gave it to her, and Bella used to pick it up by the scruff of its neck and carry it around. I wish I had some photos or video of that, because I don't think I've got any, but here's some video of her with a different toy, that again, same kind of noises that she would make carrying this thing around. And then she'd settle down with it somewhere and start kicking it with her back legs, and then she'd maybe throw it around a bit, and then pick it up and carry it somewhere else. Oh, she was so funny. I mean, our other cat sometimes picked things up by the scruff of his neck, but she used to do that regularly. It was quite a strange behaviour. I mean, maybe it's quite common with cats, I don't know, but it was definitely adorable. Oh dear. And God, like I said, she loved food. I mean, our other cat, Berman, I think he'd never known the experience of there not being food around for him to eat. He's a real grazer, whereas she was a gannet. She would just, and the funny little noises she would make unfortunately because of her breathing problems, eating, oh dear. And she would just eat so fast, and she just seemed always hungry. I think if we'd have let her, she would have grown into an enormous cat, but we were relatively good at keeping her diet under control. And she was a smart cat as well. She was quite good at opening doors, and she was a little bit of an escape artist. I remember one time in particular, I was looking everywhere for her, and it was kind of late in the evening. The bungalow we lived in had a courtyard, and I used to leave the door open a bit, and the cats could come in and out as they wanted, because it was all nice and self-contained, and the walls were too high for them to climb out of, or so I thought. And then I was searching around for about half an hour, couldn't find her, went outside the little compound where we lived, walked around it, couldn't find her. I was really worried because my wife was away working in Turkey at the time, and I thought, oh, if I lose Bella, she is absolutely going to kill me. Like I'd said earlier, the cats are a bit like our children, so it'd be like her losing her daughter. She would have been distraught. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll have a look and see if she's got on the roof. And so I kind of climbed up the wall a bit to have a look. And I actually got a step ladder up to have a look on the roof, and looked across 2 doors down, and I saw this silhouette of her on, not next doors, but the door after's carport. Luckily, the neighbour was in at the time and was able to help me get her down. All it took was a little bit of food to entice her, and she came running. And it wasn't until I think a couple of weeks later, when I was outside checking on the cats, and I realised how she got out, because she started climbing up this gate or kind of fence bit that we'd had put in to stop the cats getting around the back of the bungalow. And it posed no problem to her. She could just get up the top of it and get on the roof from there. But luckily it was easy to kind of block it off so she couldn't escape again. But yeah, she was a smart cat. She really was. Oh, yeah. And one of the little tricks that she did as well, she used to like to reach up for things, especially when food was being prepared. So we used to play a little game of high five before giving her food. So she'd climb up and stick her paw out. And it was so adorable. Yeah, definitely going to miss her. I don't think we're going to get another cat like her. Well, I think I've easily gone on for long enough. Thank you very much if you're still listening. And I promise the next video I'll be making a vlog, and I'll get onto gaming related things and much more interesting and happier topic for you guys. But thanks very much for watching. Until next time. Bye-bye.